Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Christian Demas, and today we are talking about the Fiendsmith. So, if you have looked anywhere in the Yu-Gi-Oh space, you will know that the Fiendsmith are crazy-ass cards that are coming to us in Infinite Forbidden, with the namesake being the Fiendsmith, or I think it's Fiendsmith Requiem? Forgot what the translation name was, but if you know anything about these cards, you know that they are generic and very, very good for many reasons. Being able to easily spam out 4-link material, 2 level 6s to make a rank 6, and allowing for natural extenders for some of the best decks right now going forward. All this video is meant to be is a bit of a starter to get you in the mind of how these cards work and what it is you can do with them. Because even though it looks like some cards might be bricks more than others, each of the Fiendsmiths are usable in their own way, and they require different stuff to play accordingly. Now, what do I mean by this? As I'm sure everyone knows, the Fiendsmith is the card you normally start out with. However, what happens when you open just a spell? Open just Fabled Lurry. That type of thing is what I want to address in this video, as well as the normal mainstream Fiendsmith combo as well, and how it is applicable to mainly Yubel, Snake Eyes, and also just any other deck that can utilize this engine, because it is really that powerful and that generic. The first thing I want to do is show you the mainstream combo with the Fiendsmith. The Fiendsmith in hand allows you to discard it and add a Fiendsmith spell or trap from the deck to your hand. So let's go ahead and do that. Declare the effect, send it to grave, and add Tractus to hand. Now, Tractus, or the other spell, which I cannot remember the name of, do essentially the same thing. Well, I'll read Tractus first, and then I will mention the other card. Fiendsmith Tractus is a normal spell that allows you to add a Light Fiend from your deck to your hand and then discard a card. It also has the effect to banish itself to perform a fusion summon of a Fiendsmith fusion monster from your extra deck using materials on field and in hand. Now, this is essentially how you're getting to your Link one. The other trap does, or the other spell does essentially the same thing, where it just creates a level 1 Fiend token. With Tractus, which is a little bit better, but the other one is still viable, we will declare it, adding to hand Fabled Lurry, and then discarding Fabled Lurry for the cost of Tractus. Now, Fabled Lurry has a cool little line of text. If this card is discarded to the grave, special summon it. So we special summon it since it triggers itself after discarding off of Tractus, and now we have a Fiend to link off with. Going into Requiem, as it only requires 1 Light Fiend monster, you are now able to use its effect, which allows it to tribute itself for cost and then special summon a Fiendsmith monster from the deck. In this case, it will be the Fiendsmith. Now from here, you have 2 things you can do. Now, the first thing, which is what you will do anyway, is use the other effect of Fiendsmith in the grave. It allows you to, for cost, shuffle back another Light Fiend monster and then special summon itself from the grave. Now, while you will still be doing this, a really cool thing that makes these cards kind of a little better going second is the effect of the Requiem and the Fiendsmith. The Fiendsmith is able to send an equip card on face-up field and a card your opponent controls to the grave. How do you get this on field? Well, Fiendsmith Requiem, and all the links for that matter, have the effect to attach themselves to Fiendsmith monsters. So you can make that live, and going second, you have a free send before you continue with your combo. Continuing with the combo, we will use the effect of the Fiendsmith, shuffling back either's more or less it causes no difference, as they will both be back in the deck regardless. We'll just do Requiem for the sake of time, and now we will special summon him. And now from here, you have 2 options. You can either A, overlay these 2 to make a rank 6 of your choosing, name ones being Beatrice and DDD Wave King Caesar, or you can link these 2 into Sequentia to go for even more bodies. It really depends on what you need. Right here, this is your 4th summon, meaning if I overlaid for a rank 6, that would be my 5th summon. That makes Wave King Caesar really convenient, as he will be your 5th summon and you'll pay perfectly around Nibiru. So if that is what your hand requires, you could stop here, make the rank 6, and move on with whatever else your starter is, mainly being Lotus or Snake Eye. But another thing you can do is link these 2 off. and go into the link to Sequentia. Sequentia is another light fiend that allows you to fusion summon a Fiendsmith card by shuffling back light fiends from the graveyard. So, what we will do is declare the effect, and if you look, we have the perfect amount of material, namely being one Fiendsmith and one Vaporblurry, to go ahead and shuffle these two back to make Fiendsmith Lacrimosa. Under level 6, that on fusion summon targets a Fiendsmith card or targets a light fiend in the graveyard or banishment and adds it to hand or special summons it, that being the Fiendsmith. Now here, a couple things. Again, you have the ability to go into a rank 6, but this time you have Sequentia as a link to monster on field, allowing for even more extensions. Now this does play a little bit more into Nibiru, but seeing as how this is all off of one card and you still have 4 cards in hand, you have many other starters and extenders that aren't just this. Additionally, if you notice, everything we've done so far has perfectly shuffled itself back. We have left no residue. The Link one is back into our extra deck. The Fabled Lurry is back into our deck. The other Fiendsmith that we brought out is back in our deck. This is a very, very potent recursion. It allows itself to happen multiple times, and when you use your Fiendsmith and stuff starts resolving, you never truly get rid of it, as it will go back into the extra deck or deck only to happen again. Now, there is a third thing you can do, and that is with Fiendsmith Tractus. Now, as I mentioned, Tractus has the ability to banish to fusion summon with field and hand, meaning you just send the cards from their designated areas to the grave. And again, we have 3 bodies, which makes it exactly enough to go into Diaz Irae. Diaz Irae requires the Fiendsmith himself and 2 light fiend monsters, something we definitely have on field. And what makes him really cool is that he is essentially a form of Omni-Negate. He has the ability that he can quick effect to non-target negate cards on field up to the number of link rating that is attached to him. So as I mentioned earlier, since the link cards of the Fiendsmith can attach to these monsters, you can attach Sequentia to them, thus giving you 2 non-targeted or non-targeting targeted negates, if that makes sense. This is really good because you are able to beat most board breakers. Suddenly, evenly doesn't really matter that much anymore. Suddenly, Triple Tactics Talent, Change of Heart, Feather Duster, these types of things. And you can even play around things like Dark Ruler and Forbidden Droplet. How? Well, since it is a non-targeting targeted negate, meaning you negate face-up cards on field, that means that if someone activates Dark Ruler, you can respond with a spell or a trap, and then Chainlink 3 Diaz Irae to negate the Dark Ruler and or Forbidden Droplet, making this a very, very good card. From here, you can already see how just this one card adds so much to your turn. You have ways to fend off going second with the abilities to send cards on field away. You have ways to an Omni-Negate, ways to a rank 6 to beat Nibiru, ways to a rank 6 to make Beatrice to extend. You can just make an Appaloosa and start your turn normally that way. The Fiendsmith himself adds so much advantage, it is gross. But what if you don't open the Fiendsmith? What if you open Tractus? What if you open Fabled Lurry? Let's go through that. So here we are with Fabled Lurry. Probably the worst one to open up of the 2. It's not unplayable, but it is pretty bad. Now, the thing about Fabled Lurry is you do need a second form of extender. Reason being this. If you have Fabled Lurry, a lot of the time it's better to just start with any of your other things. If you have a Diabellstar in hand, that's probably better. If you have, say, a Samsara Lotus in hand, that's probably better. And here's why. As I mentioned earlier, Fabled Lurry is probably the worst one to open of the 3. Mainly being because you want a way to get a second monster on field. Now, why is that? That is because with Fabled Lurry as your only normal summon, you can't get away with too much. Here's why. Obviously, if your only option is to, you shall normal the Fabled Lurry. This will allow you to link off into the Requiem. You can use Requiem's effect, getting the Fiendsmith, and now you're at a bit of a crossroads because, well, what are you supposed to do from now? This is why it is important to have a second body on field. If you, say, have a Gruesome Grave Skirmer, a common extender for the Yubel deck, you can declare his effect to special summon himself. Now that becomes the second body. Now you can go into Sequentia and use its effect. Now the cool part here is that you will shuffle back the Requiem and the Fabled Lure to get Lacrimosa and declare his effect. Now, here is a really cool thing you can do here. As I mentioned earlier, this is off of opening just Lure. This means a couple things. A, I have never used the Fiendsmith effect in the grave, meaning that when these two inevitably go to the grave, I can use the Fiendsmith as an extender by shuffling back either of these guys from the graveyard to special summon him, either to make rank 6 plays or link plays or simply for having the body on field. Additionally, it means that I never used Tractus. This is important because when I use Lacrimosa, I have the option to add the Fiendsmith to hand. Why is this important? Because again, I never actually use the effect of the Fiendsmith in hand, meaning I could discard him, add Tractus, activate Tractus, get Lure, dump Lure, and since Lure is not once per turn, he would come back, and now I have 4 bodies. Now granted, I don't have 2 level rank 6s, but that can be easily fixed. Fabled Lure and the Sequentia can go into a Promethean Princess. They can go into a Yama, an SP, and then Fiendsmith can shuffle back the Fabled Lure to come out and become the second level 6 for Lacrimosa. Now, if you did all this with that special body, it can mean even more things. When you inevitably go into your rank 6, say a Beatrice, you can dump a Spirit of Yubel to be reborn by Gruesome Gravesquirmer. I will once again say, the Fiendsmith are very gross cards, and they allow for very, I don't want to dare say fun, but damn if you don't play through every single hand trap your opponent has, and it feels kind of good. As you see from this, having Fabled Lure in your hand while requiring another card to be able to special summon in some way, shape, or form is still not bad and allows you to do a lot of really cool things. So much so that you could argue it's a little bit better than opening, say, the Fiendsmith at times. Now, of course, you need to use your normal summon, which is not good per se, but it is definitely playable, and as you saw from this, you can do a lot with having to use Fabled Lure as your normal summon. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is one more part of this that makes this very much playable, and that is that Tractus also acts as the same thing. It is essentially the Fabled Lure lines that I just showed you, but infinitely better. Why is that? Well, as I mentioned earlier, Fabled Lure takes up your normal summon if you want to use it as part of your hand. Of course, it can be attributed for cost of a DL Bellstar or something else, a discard for a Muckraker, any type of thing like that. Now, the really cool part about that is when you open Tractus, you don't have to normal summon. Your normal summon can be something else, and that's really important because you can lead with something like a Sincerity Lotus. Now I play Yubel, which is why I've been using these examples, but it is really cool when you can normal summon the Lotus, say it gets impermed, effect failures, that kind of thing. You can then go Tractus, adding and discarding the Fabled Lure, triggering itself, getting it to hand, and then linking it off for the link one. Requiem effect, go into the Fiendsmith, and again, here you have options. I could go into Yama if I wanted to, shuffle back Fiendsmith, and well, now I have 3 bodies on field as well as a Sharvara. I could go into the Link 2 and do plays that were indicative of what you saw earlier. Go into Sequentia. Sequentia make the rank 6. The only difference being is that when you inevitably target the Fiendsmith, adding it to hand is no longer a viable option as you have used the field spell. So you can instead just special summon it to field, and you're right where you would be in the normal mainstream line. The reason why this is just slightly better is because you don't have to use Lure as your normal summon. Tractus can just be a natural extender. You'll start to notice that no matter what of the Fiendsmiths you open, you are essentially getting there the same way. Whether it be the Fiendsmith, whether it be Tractus, whether it be just opening Lure, these cards are so powerful that no matter which ones you open, and in any combination, with the exception of opening the Fiendsmith and the spell, because, unlucky, you can play through things. You can use these cards naturally and still put up amazing boards and essentially get to the same place you would have been, although with a little bit less or more effort depending on which one you open. Overall, the Fiendsmith is a meta warping card. It, as long as with engine, is going to be the adventure engine on steroids, any of those other things. Now, I've only joined in within this last year, but I have heard talk of these other formats where they had expensive ass engines that every deck could run and where there was only benefit. And to me, this just seems like that plus 1,000. This engine is uber powerful. You saw the numbers it can put up for link material. You saw the ease in which it can put level 6s on field to play around Nibiru. You saw the natural extender-like abilities and starter abilities of both the Fiendsmith and Tractus, as well as the fact that normal summon Luri sometimes is just as good as send Fiendsmith. Top it off, they have beautiful recursion, allowing themselves to be used several times, ensuring that once they're gone, they're never truly gone, only to be put back in the extra deck and the main deck to be used again for turns and turns on end. The Fiendsmith is going to be a meta warping card, and the engine in which he is in is going to be probably one of the most expensive things we will have ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! And for any of you other friends going to the NAWCQ, I am wishing the best of luck for both you and your wallet.